Imagine losing everything because of one mistake. Imagine being trapped behind bars, not just physically, but mentally, replaying every bad choice you ever made. Now picture this. That same person finds a way to rebuild, to rise, and to turn his pain into purpose. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you believe in second chances and powerful true life stories, take a second right now, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss more stories like this one. And as you listen, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe people can truly change? Drop your answer in the comments below. I'll be reading them all. Alright, let's get into the story. This is From Cell to Success. The Convict's Redemption Story. The journey of Marcus Reed. A man who went from a prison cell to purpose and proved that no past is powerful enough to define your future. If you met Marcus 10 years ago, you'd probably think he had it all together. He was that guy who made things happen. Smooth talker, fast learner, the one who could hustle his way through any challenge. Born and raised in a rough neighborhood in Atlanta, Marcus didn't have many chances handed to him. His mother worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by day and serving tables at night, while his father drifted in and out of their lives. By 16, Marcus had learned one thing. If he wanted something, he had to take it. He wasn't bad at heart, but life taught him that rules were flexible when you were desperate. He started small, selling sneakers, flipping phones, but that hunger for more turned dangerous fast. When you grow up surrounded by struggle, success starts to look like speed. Fast cars, fast cash, fast respect. And Marcus wanted all of it. By his mid-20s, he was running with the wrong crowd. He got into credit card scams, stolen electronics, and side hustles that always seemed to work until they didn't. He told himself it was temporary, that once he made enough money, he'd go legit. But life doesn't wait for you to change your mind. One night, a deal went bad. A warehouse, a stolen shipment, and one wrong move, sirens, flashing lights, and hands on the hood of a car. Marcus didn't even resist when they cuffed him. Somewhere deep down, he knew this day was coming. They gave him 8 years. 8 years for theft, fraud, and possession. At the sentencing, he looked over and saw his mother crying quietly in the back row. That image burned into his mind. He'd failed her. He'd failed himself. When they took him in, he thought prison would be just another test, something to survive. But the reality hit hard. The walls weren't just physical. They were mental. Every day looked the same. The clock on the wall felt frozen, like time had stopped just to punish him. Marcus had always been confident, but inside those walls, confidence didn't mean much. Respect was earned differently. You had to keep your head down, choose your words carefully, and never show weakness. He saw fights break out over something as small as a phone call or a missing tray of food. Nights were the worst, when the noise faded and the silence reminded him how far he'd fallen. At first, he blamed everyone, his friends, the system, bad luck. But blame doesn't build freedom. It was his second year inside when things changed. One night, Marcus got into a fight. A guard found a stolen shank under his bed. And even though it wasn't his, he was thrown into solitary confinement. The whole 23 hours a day in a tiny, windowless room. No sound, no sunlight, no one to talk to. First, he screamed. He cursed the world, the guards, and himself. But after days turned into weeks, the noise inside him started to quiet. He began to think. For the first time in years, he faced himself. Not Marcus the hustler, not Marcus the victim. Just a man who'd made choices he couldn't undo. A Bible sat on the shelf in that cell. He hadn't opened one since he was a kid. But boredom turned to curiosity, and curiosity turned to reflection. He read a line that stuck with him. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. He didn't know it then, but that verse became the foundation for everything that came next. After solitary, Marcus came out quieter, calmer. The guards noticed. The inmates noticed. Something in him had shifted. He started spending time in the prison library, not because he loved books, but because it was one of the few places he could breathe. He read about business, psychology, and personal development. Napoleon Hill, Viktor Frankl, Malcolm X. Men who faced impossible odds and found purpose in pain. Frankl's man's search for meaning hit him hardest. The idea that you could endure almost anything if you had a reason why stirred something deep inside him. That's when he made a decision. He couldn't change the past, but he could change what came next. He started mentoring younger inmates, helping them with GED prep. It began small, a few guys around a table helping each other spell words or solve math problems. But soon it became a group, a brotherhood. For the first time, Marcus wasn't surviving prison, he was growing in it. Change doesn't happen overnight. Marcus still had bad days. Days when anger crept back in, when memories of the streets haunted him. But he learned something powerful. Freedom starts in the mind. He began writing letters to his mother, long, heartfelt messages about the man he was trying to become. At first, she didn't respond. Too much pain, too many broken promises. Then one day a letter came, just a few lines. "Keep going, son. I see you trying." That was all he needed. He enrolled in every program he could: business management, carpentry, computer basics. He took notes like his life depended on it, because in many ways it did. One of the instructors noticed his focus and said something that stuck. "Marcus, you're not just learning for a job. You're learning for your freedom." From then on, every page he read, every skill he learned, felt like a brick in the foundation of a new life. 5 years into his sentence, Marcus had a reputation, not as a troublemaker, but as a mentor. He helped others write resumes, fill out parole forms, and write letters to their families. He wasn't preaching. He was sharing lessons he'd learned the hard way. Then one day, a guard pulled him aside and said, "Reed, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. You're different." It was the first time someone in authority had spoken to him with respect. That night, Marcus sat on his bunk and thought about the man he was becoming. He didn't just want to get out of prison, he wanted to stay out. And that meant finding a purpose that would outlive his past. He started drafting a plan, a real business plan, for something he could build once he got out. Not for money, but for impact. He wanted to create something that gave other ex-convicts a chance to rebuild too. That seed of an idea would grow into something powerful later, but for now it was just a spark of hope in a dark place. The day Marcus walked out, the air hit different. The world was louder, faster, brighter. He looked around like someone seeing color for the first time. He thought about everything he'd planned behind those walls, the business ideas, the goals, the promises he'd made to himself. He was ready to start over, but the world wasn't ready for him. Finding work with a criminal record was harder than he'd imagined. Applications went unanswered. Interviews ended as soon as they asked, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony?" He stayed with his cousin for a few months, sleeping on a couch in a small apartment. The fridge was almost always empty, and most days, Marcus had to choose between bus fare and food. He kept reminding himself of what he learned in prison, that freedom starts in the mind. But when the bills piled up and doors kept closing, that lesson was tested every single day. Eventually, Marcus found a job, cleaning offices at night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. He worked in silence, pushing a mop through empty hallways of downtown buildings. Every reflection on the floor reminded him of how far he had to go. But he had a rule: never waste a night. After his shift, he'd walk to a 24-hour library, grab an old laptop, and teach himself new skills: basic coding, budgeting, marketing. Anything he could find online for free. He was building something in the dark that no one else could see. One night, an older security guard struck up a conversation. His name was Mr. Collins. Gray hair, calm voice, the kind of man who'd seen things. He said, "You remind me of someone who's running from the past but chasing the future at the same time." Marcus smiled and said, "That's exactly what I'm doing." Mr. Collins became one of his quiet supporters, bringing him books, checking on him, reminding him that growth takes time. And for Marcus, that encouragement meant more than money. It meant hope. Months went by. Marcus saved every dollar he could. One day, he overheard two men talking about recycling and how most neighborhoods threw away valuable materials that could be repurposed. That conversation stuck. He remembered what his instructor once told him in prison: "You're not just learning for a job, you're learning for your freedom." So he started small. He borrowed an old truck from his cousin and began collecting recyclables from local shops: plastic, scrap metal, bottles. He sold them to recycling centers and earned just enough to keep going. It wasn't easy. Some days he worked 12 hours and made only $20. But this time, every dollar came from honesty, and that felt priceless. He named his small venture Second Chance Recycling. The name said it all, not just for the materials he collected, but for the life he was rebuilding. But success doesn't come without setbacks. One morning, his truck broke down. Another week, a local business canceled their contract after learning about his past. Marcus felt that familiar weight again, the voice in his head saying, "You'll never outrun your mistakes." He almost quit. Then he thought about the young men he used to mentor in prison, how he told them never to give up when things got hard. He couldn't be a hypocrite, so he called every shop, every factory, every small business in the area until someone said yes. Little by little, jobs trickled in. One small contract led to another, and before long, Second Chance Recycling wasn't just surviving, it was growing. He began hiring other ex-convicts who couldn't find work. He trained them, paid them fairly, and told them exactly what he once needed to hear. Your past doesn't define you. Your decisions do. As the business grew, Marcus realized he wasn't just collecting recyclables, he was collecting stories of redemption. Each person he hired had a story. A man who'd lost his family, a young guy who'd never had a real job, a woman who'd spent years trying to prove she was more than her mistakes. Together, they formed something rare, a team built on second chances. Local media caught wind of what he was doing. A small news outlet did a segment titled, "From Prison to Purpose." It went viral in his community. Suddenly, Marcus was invited to speak at youth programs, schools, and even prisons, the same kind of place he once sat in as an inmate. He stood before those men and said, "I'm not here because I was lucky. I'm here because I stopped letting my past be my excuse." The biggest moment came when he saw his mother again, after nearly 10 years apart. She showed up at one of his speaking events, standing quietly at the back. When he spotted her, he froze. After the event, she walked up, hugged him, and said softly, "You finally kept your promise." He didn't need to ask what she meant. That one sentence erased years of guilt and pain. For Marcus, that hug was the real freedom he'd been chasing all along. Marcus kept building, one contract, one employee, one lesson at a time. He started partnering with local nonprofits to create training programs for ex-offenders, teaching them business skills and helping them re-enter society with dignity. He didn't just want to run a company. He wanted to create a movement. And that's exactly what he did. By the 5th year, Second Chance Recycling had become one of the most trusted community-driven waste management companies in the region. He had a team, an office, and a purpose, but more importantly, he had peace. Marcus's journey wasn't perfect. He still faced judgment, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But every scar told a story not of failure, but of survival. He once said in an interview, "Prison didn't change me. My mindset did. Freedom isn't walking out of a gate. It's choosing who you become once you're out." And this, my friends, is where the rise begins, where a man who was once broken learns that rebuilding isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were meant for more. But before you go, tell me in the comments, what part of Marcus's journey hit you the hardest? Was it the struggle to find work, or the courage to keep going when no one believed in him? Your comments mean a lot, and they help others connect to these stories too. Because trust me, the best part of Marcus Reed's story is still to come. If you've made it this far, thank you for following Marcus Reed's journey. And if you're new here, take a second to hit the subscribe button and tap the notification bell. That way you won't miss any of the inspiring stories we share on this channel. Now let's pick up where we left off. Marcus had turned his pain into purpose, his mistakes into momentum. But the road to true redemption, that came next. The first time Marcus spoke at a high school, he was nervous. He'd been invited to talk about choices, discipline, and second chances. Standing in front of hundreds of students, he looked out and saw himself in those young faces. The same curiosity, the same restlessness, the same hunger for direction. He began with honesty, I'm not here as a hero. I'm here as a man who learned the hard way what happens when you stop believing you can do better. The room went quiet. Then, for the next 30 minutes, he told them everything. The cell, the sleepless nights, the shame, and the slow climb back. When he finished, the applause wasn't loud. It was real. Students lined up afterward, thanking him for his words. One boy said, "My brother's in prison right now. Hearing you made me believe he can change." That one sentence reminded Marcus why he started. His story wasn't just about him anymore. It was about hope and giving people proof that redemption was possible. As Second Chance Recycling continued to grow, Marcus began partnering with organizations across the state. He launched a mentorship initiative called Rebuild, designed to train formerly incarcerated individuals in business, communication, and leadership. The goal wasn't just employment, it was empowerment. He'd stand before groups of men and women who looked tired, beaten down, and tell them, "You're not broken, you're rebuilding. The world might not see it yet, but you're laying bricks no one else can." The impact was massive. Within 2 years, over 100 people had completed the Rebuild program. Many went on to start their own small businesses or return to school. Marcus realized something profound. Success wasn't measured by how much he gained, it was by how much he gave. But even as life got better, challenges didn't disappear. Some nights, Marcus still woke up sweating. Memories of prison, old mistakes replaying in his mind. He faced criticism too. There were people who said things like, "Once a convict, always a convict." Others tried to dig up his past whenever his story gained attention. First, that hurt. But over time, he learned to see it differently. He said during an interview, "When people remind me of my past, I remind myself that I outlived it. Their opinion can't chain me again." That mindset became his armor. Instead of hiding from his past, he owned it, not as a source of shame, but as proof that change is real. The turning point came when a major news outlet featured Marcus's story. The headline read, "From Prison to Millionaire, How Marcus Reed is Giving Ex-Convicts a Second Chance." The article went viral. Overnight, his inbox filled with messages from people across the country. Mothers of inmates, former prisoners, even business leaders asking how they could help. Soon, Marcus was invited to share his story at national conferences, universities, and community centers. He spoke alongside activists, entrepreneurs, and faith leaders. People who, like him, believed that redemption wasn't rare. It was just overlooked. Standing on that stage, Marcus often thought back to his first night in solitary confinement, the man he was then, and the man he'd become. "Back then, I thought I was buried," he told one crowd. "But I wasn't buried. I was planted." One of the most emotional moments came when Marcus returned to the same prison where he'd served his sentence, this time as a guest speaker. Walking through those gates again, he felt his heart tighten. The clang of metal, the guards' voices, all of it came rushing back. But this time, he wasn't the same man walking through. When he entered the room, dozens of inmates sat waiting. Some looked skeptical, others curious. Marcus looked around and said, "I know that smell. I know that silence. I know what it's like to stare at these walls and think you'll never leave them. But I'm here to tell you, the wall isn't your end. It's your mirror. It shows you who you've been. But it doesn't decide who you'll become." The room went silent. Then, one inmate stood up and said, "So how did you do it?" Marcus smiled and replied, "I started believing I deserved another chance, and I worked for it every single day." After the session, several inmates came up, shaking his hand, thanking him for coming back. One said, "When I get out, I'm gonna find you." Marcus handed him a card and said, "I'll be waiting." Marcus's organization kept expanding, recycling centers in new cities, mentorship programs in more prisons, and partnerships with schools and community groups. He created scholarships for children of incarcerated parents. He began working with policy advocates to improve reentry programs and push for fair hiring practices. Every success story that came through his doors reminded him that the cycle could be broken, that people just needed a bridge, not a label. One of his favorite sayings became, "A second chance isn't charity, it's justice." Years later, Marcus sat in his office, sunlight pouring in through large windows. On the wall behind him hung two photos, one of him in his prison uniform and one of him standing in front of his company's first recycling truck. He kept them there to remind himself of both sides of his story. That day, a young man walked in nervous, quiet, holding a crumpled job application. Marcus looked at him and said, "You just got out?" The young man nodded. "Last week." Marcus smiled. "I know that look. You're trying to find your way." He reached out his hand and said, "Welcome to Second Chance Recycling. We've got work to do." The young man's face lit up. For him, that handshake wasn't just employment, it was hope. And for Marcus, it was a reminder that his story had come full circle. When asked in a podcast what message he wanted to leave the world with, Marcus said this: "We talk a lot about forgiveness, but real forgiveness starts with yourself. You can't change your past, but you can learn from it until it becomes your strength. Every day you get to decide who you want to be, not just for yourself, but for everyone watching you rise." He paused, smiled, and added, "If I can turn a cell into a classroom, you can turn your pain into purpose." Today, Marcus Reed is more than an entrepreneur. He's a mentor, a father, a voice for change. His company employs dozens of people who might have never been given a chance elsewhere. His story has been shared across schools, podcasts, and documentaries, not to glorify his past, but to celebrate his transformation. He still visits prisons, still talks to young men who remind him of his younger self. And every time he leaves those walls behind, he whispers to himself, "Never again." Because redemption, for Marcus, isn't a destination. It's a daily choice to stay humble, stay focused, and keep believing that no one is too far gone to find their way back. Marcus's story isn't just about crime and punishment. It's about possibility, the power to rewrite your story, no matter how dark it once was. He went from inmate to innovator, from brokenness to purpose. And through his journey, he proved that even when life locks you in a cell, your spirit can still find the key. If Marcus's story moved you, share it. Let someone else hear what redemption looks like. And before you go, take a second to subscribe and hit that notification bell. It really helps us keep bringing stories like this to life. Also, tell me in the comments, what does a second chance mean to you? Let's talk about it, because you never know who might need to read your words today.